Alright, this is part 3 of Virginia gun grab UN invasion scenario. Now, I thought about this video because the comments trolls have been leaving saying that the UN invasion scenario is just a militia wet dream, Red Dawn wishes and that stuff. And then I also came across I think it was From the Trenches or something like that, a website where someone had linked to the second video, and then the commenters on it are talking about how I'm illiterate and stupid, and you know, this is a wet dream that I play with myself imagining these scenarios and stuff. And then they started insulting my education level and that, and it's kind of funny when you read through their comments, the way they rate their comments, it looks like someone who dropped out of grade school, never even made it to high school. The grammar is atrocious, the English sucks, no punctuation doesn't exist, the usual troll stuff. But I had a few things that kind of stuck out at me from the different troll comments that I thought I should probably kind of elaborate on. Now, with the previous videos, the first one I pointed out how, you know, it's not unfeasible for the UN to invade. It can be accomplished, especially in the beginning, by capturing equipment in the United States from our depots and that stuff, and supplying their troops from our own warehouses and even grocery stores across the United States, getting their fuel from our tank farms and that stuff, and from the gas stations. Now, we're going to start off with the chaos and anarchy. It's going on, it's primarily in the major population centers where you're going to have larger concentrations of the leftists and the anarchists, along with your socialists, your narco gangs and that stuff. Now, out in the countryside, rural America, you're not going to see much. If you see anything, it's probably going to be the occasional IED, the occasional bombing. You might have someone come through and shoot up a church during a service. You'll have cop shootings happening that are going to be attributed to the militia, but are probably being done by the leftists, by your Antifas, by Black Lives Matter, La Raza, the narco gangs, and that stuff. They'll say it's militia doing it, but it's going to be them. I could see truck bombs being used against government buildings. Think of the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. Imagine that stuff happening across rural America. Taking out state buildings, taking out federal buildings, blowing up police stations, truck bombs ramming National Guard armories while the units are mobilizing and detonating. So the media will just give us a constant barrage while this is going on about how this is Trump's fault. These attacks are being done by racist militias and crazy gun owners, all because they know that Trump is going to lose the election in November, and they'll be touting a blue wave through Congress. Now, while this is happening, you're going to have random blackouts. They're just going to appear for no apparent reason. Power's going to be going out, so that's going to be causing your base station radios that are not on battery power to go out. They won't be able to be used. You may not be trusting what's coming out of the media. You're trusting what's coming off the radio, but if your radio goes out because of no power, because you don't have that backup, well, you're still going to be left in the dark news-wise. Phones and communications blackouts. Cell towers getting taken out. Possibly some by patriots, others by the leftists and that stuff trying to add to the chaos. You'll see radio interruptions and stuff going on. You'll see internet interruptions going on. I would not put it past them to enact what people call the internet kill switch, where they just plain shut down all the service providers in the United States. They have that ability. It's been talked about for years. It was something that was put in place after 9/11 as a way to control quote-unquote disinformation. You'll see major logistics interruptions are going on. So you're going to see deliveries to your grocery stores, deliveries to your gas stations aren't going to be showing up on time. Some of these are going to be because of criminal activity. You'll have those little gangs and that stuff that are going to form. They're going to try taking advantage of the situation, so they'll be attacking those semis, they'll be taking them over, and then hauling off the truck with all the stuff inside so that they can sell it at exaggerated prices on their little black markets. Some of them will be just outright destroyed. Now, the longer this chaos lasts, the more likely people will be to sell out in order to get the pain to stop, in order to get food to their kids, in order to heat their homes, if this happens during colder weather. Now, as the chaos is going on across the country, as we know, you're going to have troops that are going to get deployed. They're going to get deployed off the active duty bases to assist around federal buildings and federal installations. You'll have National Guard, which will get sent out by the governors to control or try to contain the anarchy and guarantee the shipments of food and medical to needed areas. You're going to have Trump is going to be trying to get a hold of the situation, but he's getting undercut by deep state operatives the entire time. At the United Nations, debates are going to be going on. The debates are going to be, how do they contain the situation? Because chaos in America can spread around the world. It'll be affecting the international monetary markets, stock markets, the trade markets, and all that stuff. Someone pointed out that the United Nations won't allow this to happen because the United States buys up all the oil from around the world. No, actually, the United States is energy independent right now, has been for about a year to 2 years. But as things break down in the U.S., then we would be getting it off of the international markets again, and I can guarantee it would be at exaggerated prices. But the UN's doing its debate. They're sending threats to Trump like they've done in the past. When you've had situations like with Saddam in Iraq, the United States was pressuring the United Nations to get involved for sanctions, whatever. Well, then the UN would send out their little threats to that country. Now, at some point here, you'll probably see troops and armor deployed around the United Nations building in New York for security. It's possible these could be troops that are brought in from Canada or possibly from England. I doubt it'll be U.S. troops because I don't think Trump would help out. I'd say New York police would help out. But they're going to want those troops. They're going to want that armor and barricades around the UN protecting it. The media will play up that these peacekeepers around the UN, they're going to play up their professionalism, their nobility, their abilities to de-escalate dangerous situations. They're going to be getting lots of that footage of those UN peacekeepers handing out candy and food to the kids. They're going to be humanizing those UN troops in the people's eyes, showing their good sides. And they're not going to talk about the atrocities committed by UN troops overseas. And as I said in the past, I am aware that there is no UN military, that these are troops that are sent in by governments around the world to support a United Nations mission. Now, sometime a vote will occur on the Security Council. Without the United States being present, they will be excluded from the meeting. They will discuss the commencement of peacekeeping operations in the United States and removing Trump from power. The vote will pass, and then they will go to the General Assembly and they will start asking for volunteers for the operation. Who's willing to commit troops for the quote-unquote peacekeeping operations? While this is going on, the U.S. representative will not be involved in any of these discussions. They will not allow this stuff to go out on the media. They're going to keep it behind closed doors. Now, the peacekeepers will enter the United States. I already gave you a possible scenario on how they could do it and secure military objectives at the same time. Now, while this is happening, you can guarantee the internet will be down. Phones and cell phones, other means of communications will be down. There will be massive radio interference on non-controlled frequencies. They'll allow a few frequencies to still broadcast, and they will be putting out propaganda pieces, pro-peacekeeper pieces. The media, when they cover the peacekeepers coming in, they will show the good side, the happy side of the peacekeepers. They'll say and they'll focus on the deployments on the East Coast and West Coast. They will concentrate on those major ports. They will show those ships coming in. They will show the dock workers happy, smiling as they're offloading containers of food and medical supplies. They will not show in any of those pictures the military equipment that is coming in. They will not show the troops coming in. If they show any troops, it will be probably multi-ethnic, especially female-heavy units with Red Cross armbands. All part of the optics game. They'll show them coming off, will not show them with weapons. They'll show them throwing on their rucksacks, picking up bags with Red Crosses on them and that stuff. Going to unarmored vehicles. They will show pictures of the convoys leaving the ports with container loads of food, medical supplies, and fresh water. They will show that stuff being delivered by these UN troops. You might see a few with weapons in the background pulling security. The media will say that those troops are only armed to protect themselves from militia bandits and crazed gun owners. And white supremacists who are trying to kill non-whites who are delivering food to the poor, starving people who are being victimized across the United States. They will show footage of UN doctors taking over hospitals and the U.S. staff willing and cheerfully following the orders from these United Nations doctors as they're getting these hospitals back into operation. The hospitals are probably out of supplies or running out of supplies because this has been going on for months. Some of them will have been emptied out, probably burned out. So they're going to show them in there, getting them back into operations. You're going to see pictures of, pregnant women on the tables, getting checked out by the doctors, getting handed that bottle of prenatal vitamins and stuff. You'll see the kids in there with the tongue depressors in their mouths getting checked out and that stuff. You'll hear the sob stories and everything about, the militia bandits caused this and that. And the pregnant woman who's probably going to be like 6 months pregnant, you're going to get told that, she was raped by militia and that stuff. And they're discussing if she wants to keep the baby or if she should have the child aborted because it'll be a constant reminder of what happened. You'll have news reports of peacekeepers gathering up the illegal weapons, and they'll be performing raids on militias and criminal gangs, and they will not distinguish the difference between the two. They're going to lump them together into reports, kind of like they do now as part of the PR stuff. Now, as time goes on, you're going to start seeing a shift in the pictures where instead of it being UN trucks dropping off the food and that stuff, you'll probably see UN security vehicles escorting convoys of US semi-trucks that they're going out to deliver food out to the stores and that stuff, that they're establishing normalcy. Now, some of you are probably screaming, what about Trump? What about Trump? While this stuff is starting, Trump is going to be isolated, he will be removed, and then he will be disposed of. Now, I'm not sure on this. You could see Pence will then take the position of president. He is a globalist minion. That was pointed out back during the elections. People were wondering, why did Trump pick Pence? Because he's a known globalist minion. You'll probably see Pelosi brought in as the vice president so that you get your bipartisanship in the reins of government. They'll play that up. Now, if Pence would not go along with the situation, you'll probably see him removed from office also. If they think Pelosi is strong enough to just be that figurehead of president, they'll put her in there, but she will have absolutely no power. It'll just be for cameras. It could also see the possibility that they'll put Obama back in power. You don't know. It's kind of hard to say who they would put in there. Now, after Trump is removed and he's disposed of, and I don't mean he's put in a cell, they put a gun to the back of his head and they'll blow out his brains, and they'll kill his family at the same time. He'll just be made to disappear. They won't talk about him anymore. He'll be gone and forgotten. But as the transition happens, you're going to hear that because of the chaos and the anarchy, that the elections in November will be suspended until further notice, until normalcy has been reestablished. And they promise they will have these elections as soon as possible. Now, members of Congress that do not agree with what's going on will mysteriously step down, or will be told that they step down, that they're leaving as a protest vote. Replacements will be selected by the state governments or certain people in the state governments. It may not actually be a person that's selected by that actual state. It's someone that will be told was selected by the government of that state. The media will not allow any stories to go out to the contrary. Now, as this stuff is going on, the hungry, the scared, the sick population, they're going to welcome those peacekeepers coming in. Because they're going to want the normalcy. They want to go back to the way it was. They're going to want to be able to go back to McDonald's again, to go to the Starbucks, to just watch football and that. They probably don't care in the situation. They're fence sitters. All they care about is being able to get on with their lives. They're happy being sheep. So they will welcome the United Nations troops there because, well, the news that they do get when occasionally the TV does come on or the radio does work is just talking nonstop on how these peacekeepers are here to help. Now, some people have brought up to me about the UN would not be able to take over control of the entire country during the invasion. No country ever is taken down completely during an invasion. An invasion is just getting a foothold. You're getting that base of operations started in that area so that you can expand outward. This is the same situation. They would be just securing the strategic areas that they need to, securing those airports, securing those harbors so that they can bring in more troops, more equipment to expand outward. Now, I highly doubt that they will be distributing a lot of food and that stuff. I think what we will see on the camera will be very limited, and it's just for show. I don't see them going out and actually delivering food and medical supplies to the population because they want that chaos to exploit it. Now, as time goes on, the UN presence will grow. More troops are coming in, more equipment's coming in. Larger and larger areas are getting quote-unquote pacified, meaning that they're going through, they're taking the guns away, disarming the people, they're arresting potential troublemakers that have been identified. Now, there are going to be areas where there will be no UN presence at all. I've been thinking on this. I think they're going to have some areas where they're going to deliberately not put in any UN presence to trick us into believing that these are safe zones, so that we're trying to figure out what to do with our families. We see that, hey, this area over here, there's no troops. So we will take our families over there so that they're safe. They're out of the battle zone. They're out of the anarchy. And I think after they believe that it's been a set amount of time, enough people have congregated in these safe areas, you'll probably see massive carpet bombing going across there. You know, along the lines of your B-52 arc light raids from Vietnam War. They're just, or the bombings you've seen in World War II. They're just going to come through. They're going to carpet bomb everything. Take it out. They'll take out all the cities and that stuff. Wherever the satellites say that there's large concentrations of people, they'll just come through and they'll bomb the hell out of it. They don't have to use smart weapons. They don't have to use bunker busters. They can use just the 500 pounders. Just drop a string of them right across that area. I also anticipate seeing chemical strikes and possibly biological weapons released in those areas too, to try to wipe out as many people as possible. Now, what can we do about this while this is going on? Patriots, and these are the people that are not in militia. These are not people that are combat troops. This is the Patriots side of thing, the auxiliary, the support. They need to get word out. They need to put up posters. They need to print out newspapers. They need to have town hall meetings in their areas showing video footage of what's happening inside these UN-controlled areas. Hopefully you have survivors from those areas that can tell what they experienced. Explain it to the population. They need to talk about the raids that are being conducted by the United Nations. How they're being conducted. Are they indiscriminate? Are they targeted? That stuff. They need to talk about the treatment that's happening at their roadblocks. You know, give the hard details of what's actually occurring, so that people that are considering welcoming these UN peacekeepers realize that that's not going to be a good thing. They need to know the truth. You also need to remind the people of our history. The founding of this country, what happened, the hardships the founding fathers and the population went through as they fought for freedom. You need to remind them of that. And they also must continue to remind people that these UN peacekeepers, it's an invasion, that they are here for one reason, and that's to enslave us and our children. Point out how constitutional rights do not exist in their areas that they control. There is no free speech. There's no free press. There's no right to defend yourself. You know, fair trials don't exist. Now, any captured food supplies and that stuff from those UN convoys or taken from UN bases, they should be distributed in friendly areas with the help of the local government. You're going to have some people in local government that are going to be patriot, that are going to be fence sitter. Use them to your advantage. Have them help out with distributing the food fairly to the people, and make sure it is getting distributed fairly. Now, there should also be the patriots and the militia should help out with helping people get set up with gardens, get their yards turned into gardens, helping with getting fields planted in that. Any heirloom seeds that you have, should be protected from contamination. So when they get put in, they should get put in an area where they're far enough away from GMO seeds and GMO plants, where it's not going to contaminate those heirloom plants, so that you can maximize that seed production from those plots as time goes on, constantly building it up. Now, something that'll have to happen in these quote-unquote safe areas where the UN troops are not coming into, you should help with rebuilding and stocking of the old bomb shelters, to include putting up new signs. Guess what? All those supplies were taken out back in the 90s. A lot of these have been, what made them bomb shelters, not having windows to the outside and that stuff. Those windows were put in there now. Go through, help get those bomb shelters rebuilt. Get them secured so that before any air raids would occur, they're ready. Getting those bunks in there, those stocks of blankets, cots, chairs, whatever's needed. You should also assist with building new air raid shelters, especially near manufacturing facilities. You should also conduct community classes, teaching skills on homesteading, on gardening, cooking basics. And there's people literally out there that do not know how to boil water. All they know is how to take something out of a fridge, out of a freezer, pop it in a microwave, hit a button, and then they can eat. People need to be taught the basics. And there should also be classes on encouraging people on how to build their own air raid shelters at their homes, especially for people that live outside the cities. Just because they live out in the middle of the country does not mean the day's not going to come when they could get caught in an artillery strike, or a string of bombs gets dropped across their area because a bomber's off course, or it's damaged and it's dumping its load before it turns for home. Now, the militia obviously should help slow any advancement of UN and globalist troops. Militia that's in the areas that are been occupied should be going through conducting their guerrilla operations. Militias outside those areas should assist with training volunteers, because you're going to have some people that are finally going to get off their behinds and they're going to want to get involved, especially veterans. You're going to want to train and organize these new units, equip them as best as possible. This is where a lot of that captured equipment from on the battlefield gets smuggled out so it can get passed out to these new volunteers. Militia should also assist with capturing convoys, not just going through destroying all the trucks. Try to capture them, especially if they're close to that edge of the battle zone. You're near one of these safe areas. Try to capture those convoys and get that equipment, get that food, that fuel, and all that stuff into the safe zone. Now, if it means you have to distribute some of it to the communities on the way, go ahead and do it. That'll help with the hearts and minds. Militia inside the safe areas need to assist with constructing strong points, tunnels, and bunkers. They're getting ready for when the day comes that the enemy does reach them. The fight does reach them. So they need to be working, trying to get set up for it, getting those tunnel systems set up, getting those bunkers set up out in the woods, getting those strong points set up near the local airfields, major intersections, that stuff. Now, the tactics that should be employed should be traditional guerrilla tactics. But I have some notes here. No suicide attacks. So no doing what they did in Iraq or Afghanistan. No suicide stuff. No indiscriminate mining or booby trapping like you've seen in Vietnam. It should be targeted. It should be marked out. Trust me, markings are also a good deterrent. If the enemy thinks that area is mined, they're going to stay out of it. And no indiscriminate bombing of civilian targets. like bombing cafes, bombing restaurants, bombing hospitals. Don't do it. That's old IRA tactics, and a lot of those IRA tactics I think were being done under orders from the British government, because there's a lot of evidence that the British government was the ones calling the shots, giving the orders to the IRA troops as to where they should set these bombs off in London and that stuff to cause mass casualties. Now the militia units should do as best as they can to coordinate with friendly National Guard and reservist troops and law enforcement that are outside of the UN occupied areas. Coordinate with them. Talk it over about, well, if they show up, this is what we should think about doing. This is how we should do it. But don't fully trust them. Always be aware of possible traitors amongst these outside elements, outside the militia, and even the new people coming into the militia. Be aware that it's possible. You're going to have people trying to infiltrate to find out what you're doing, what you're planning. So keep your stuff tight. Remember operational security always. Think of how they conducted things in World War II. If need be, go back and read some of the manuals from back then about operational security, what they used to do. The militia should also be working to set up covert intelligence networks in their areas, so that you got those sensors that are set up, those eyes and ears that are all over the place, and they know where to get information to. They need to know what to look for information. What's important, what isn't important. Who should they report it to? How should they report it? And how quickly. So that's just what I could think up here. Hopefully I don't have to do a part 4 on this. I'm sure I'm going to get plenty more troll comments on this video. And I look forward to dropping the band hammer on them like I've been doing so far. So hopefully this expands outward more on this scenario. The whole UN invasion scenario is much more complicated than you realize. In some aspects it's easier, but when you actually get down into it, the specifics of it, it's one of these things where you could literally write an encyclopedia set on all these different things that would be involved in it, that they would have to do, we would have to do. But hopefully this gives you some ideas on operational planning and that stuff on your aspect. What should you be looking for, planning to do and stuff. Now for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essayons.